Hey guys, welcome back. My name is Cade and I'm joined by my friend Andrew, and this is our review for Halloween Ends from 2022. So, Andrew, with Halloween Ends, give it to me straight. Where does this movie sit with you in the franchise?
It's definitely towards the bottom, in my opinion. I didn't see this movie in theaters. I saw it when it came out to streaming, and I'm like, yeah, I'm glad I didn't pay to see this because I really did not like this one. What is it the absolute worst thing I've ever seen? No. Is it the worst thing in the Halloween franchise? No. But it's just I didn't enjoy this one. I'll be brutally honest.
I understand. We'll tell you what, why don't we just go through it? Let's go through some of the things that we did like about the movie. Do you want to go first?
Sure. And what I will start with is I like how it definitely feels like we're in a series. It definitely feels like we picked up where we left off with the last one, even though there is a bit of a time jump. That's something I've noticed. I have noticed that some franchises don't do terribly well is actually like feeling like they're actually connected, but this one does feel connected. Besides that, this is an original story. This isn't just another retread of another Halloween movie, but oh, there's not much else I really got to say good beyond that.
All right, fair enough. Tell you what, I'll go through what I like. So, when you were talking about how it's an original story, I do agree with that. So, one thing that I did like about the movie, this is also a con for me, but we'll get into that later. So, I do credit David Gordon Green and the creative team for trying something different with the franchise. I get what he was going for. This has to do with the main storyline with Corey Cunningham and how you decide to make him the focus. And again, I do appreciate his decision to try something different, but it's all about execution in the end. But we'll get into that later. But I don't know. That's just something that I do. I respect him for doing that. It's just about whether it was executed properly, if that makes sense.
Yeah, credit for doing something new, but also you kind of need to figure out when it's time to do something new and when it's time to maybe stick to something a little bit more unoriginal, shall we say? And I feel like this was definitely not the time to do something horribly original.
Yeah, I will agree with you on that. And I think next up, one thing that I do want to mention, and I think that, again, this is also kind of a pro and con for me, but it was something that I did enjoy seeing in the movie, and that was the final showdown between Laurie and Michael. Do I think it was handled better in Halloween H2O? Yes, I do. But although the movie spends most of the time focusing on Corey, I did like seeing the final battle between Laurie and Michael because even though, again, they weren't really the focus of this movie, and we'll get into that later, what I do like is that we finally got to see the two of them fight, and we finally got to see Laurie win for once, which was really nice to see. We finally got to see her take down Michael. So that part of the movie I did find satisfying.
It felt, how do I want to put this? To me, it didn't feel satisfying at all. It just felt really tacked on because it just felt like, oh, yeah, this is what we advertised. And I'll get into that in a minute, but oh yeah, we advertised the final showdown between Laurie and Michael. Might as well throw it in the last 10 minutes of the movie. It just feels so damn tacked on. What does it take place? The last 15 minutes of the movie, and this is a nearly 2 hour movie?
Yeah, it is. Okay, I understand. I'll respect your opinion on that. But yeah, why don't we get into our cons right now? So, this is something that I had mentioned when we did our review for Halloween Kills. Once again, I think that Laurie as a character is kind of sidelined just because, in Halloween Kills, she spent most of that movie in a hospital bed. And it kind of feels that way in this movie as well. It feels like she's really pushed to the side again, even though she's supposed to be the star of this trilogy. And it was kind of disappointing to see. The movie takes a lot more time with Allison and Corey, obviously, but yeah, it was kind of disappointing to see Laurie sidelined again, is all I'm saying.
Yeah, not only is she sidelined, but they kind of don't do her justice as a character because at least in Halloween Kills, she wanted to be out there fighting Michael because she knew he was out there and she knew she needed to be out there too, even though her body physically wasn't going to let her because she was so injured. This one, they know Michael's still out there, but she's just living a quiet home life. That really doesn't make too much sense based on how they established Laurie's psyche for this trilogy in the first movie, which is as long as Michael's out there, she's going to be paranoid, even if she knows he's locked up, like he was for the first part of the first movie. It just doesn't sit right with me.
Also, the fact that she was able to move on and try to live a peaceful life even after her daughter was killed in the previous movie, that part really rubbed me the wrong way.
Yeah, do they even? I think they do kind of focus on that for a little bit, but it doesn't feel like it kind of carries over into the rest of the movie, does it?
No, I think that would have been a great thing for her character, you know, if that could have been what motivated her most throughout the movie, but they didn't, but whatever. But aside from Laurie, you know who was another character who I wasn't really expecting to get sidelined in this?
Yeah, Michael Myers himself, the most famous character in this series besides maybe Laurie Strode.
Yeah, and I think that because of that, that's what makes the showdown of this movie between Laurie and Michael also a con for me. Well, on some level, I was satisfied with it. I was also dissatisfied because, again, you spend most of the movie with Corey, and we'll get into that, instead of focusing on the rivalry between Laurie and Michael, which is mainly what this trilogy has been about, and pretty much their relationship throughout the franchise in general. But in this, you have the showdown between them, and their rivalry on some level just doesn't feel. I get that it was a big part of the first two movies, but not having it be the focus of this movie also, it didn't feel as earned as it should have been.
Yeah, definitely.
But aside from that, why don't we talk about Corey next? So Corey is obviously the new main character. He's pretty much the focus of this movie. And this is where we get into what I was talking about earlier. Again, I do respect everyone, especially David Gordon Green, for wanting to do something different. I'm not too sure, like you said earlier, if now was the right time to do it.
Yeah, I feel like if they were going to introduce this character, I think it would have been better to have this be a completely new story. Like maybe have Michael does actually die at some point, and then the killings start up again, and maybe everybody starts thinking, "Oh my God, is Michael back? Is he a ghost?" And then it's revealed that it's this character. But oh my God, this Corey in this movie, I just find him so painfully bland of a character.
Yeah, that is something that I kind of felt. So I was willing to give Corey a chance when I watched the movie, and I tried to get more attached to his character, but to me, he just wasn't really all that interesting to follow. I also wasn't a huge fan of the whole romance that he had with Allison. You know, they were trying to treat it somewhat like a love story, and again, I can see what they were going for, but for me personally, I don't really watch Halloween movies looking for romance.
No, me neither. And another thing is his character motivations really don't make that much sense either. Because he spends the first part of the movie trying to, show that, oh, I'm not a killer, and then he becomes a killer. And then he's like, oh, nobody can have Allison but me, and then he kills himself. So literally everybody could have Allison except him.
Yeah, that is something that I noticed. And that's another thing I wanted to talk about. So, at a certain point in the movie, he does meet Michael, and it's not exactly clear to me what happens between the two of them, but when they meet, this sort of alliance forms between them and they start killing together. And then out of nowhere, Corey decides that he wants to turn on Michael, and we'll get into that in a few minutes. But yeah, their dynamic, I guess you should say it, throughout the movie just didn't make much sense to me. Oh, so they might have some kind of connection. Then they start killing together, but then they become enemies. I don't know. It just didn't make a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, it feels to me like they almost tried to go through a whole trilogy's worth of character development in one movie. Again, I feel like Corey again really should have been a character in a completely different timeline in the Halloween universe.
That could have been an interesting thing to explore. But another thing that I had an issue with, and I think this is something that a lot of people had an issue with as well. There's that scene in the movie where Corey confronts Michael in the sewer. He then beats Michael and then takes his mask from him. I guess my question for that is, how was Corey able to do what an entire mob full of people couldn't do? I mean, hey, I got to give Corey credit. He was able to take down Michael somehow. How though?
Yeah, and that's part of the character assassination of Michael Myers in this movie. Oh yeah, somebody who could take on an entire group of armed firefighters and heavily armed angry mob, kill his way through half the town in the first movie. All of a sudden can't handle a scrawny kid. Like I understand Michael's supposed to be what in his 60s in this movie.
Yeah, at this point, he should be in his 60s.
Yeah, but it doesn't feel like he would have gone from apex killing machine to tired old man in this short of a time frame naturally. Because again, he more than held his own in Halloween Kills, and now all of a sudden he can't beat some scrawny wimp.
Well, here's where I want to add on to that. So, in the last movie, they were teasing the idea that Michael might actually be supernatural. that he might actually be this walking evil supernatural force. And the thing about it, and this was one of our complaints when we did our review for Halloween Kills, was that the movie never really answers that. So going into this, I was hoping that they would answer that, but they kind of don't answer it. The movie kind of forgets about that in the last movie, and instead it just goes back to him being a more realistic, character. Which, hey, I like that version of Michael Myers. I like the more realistic approach for the character, but you explore the possibility that he might be supernatural in the last one, and in this one you kind of just forget about it. And the thing is, it just feels kind of unanswered.
Yeah, and make a decision one way or another. Don't be sitting on the fence constantly with that decision. Because, yeah, it definitely seems more like Michael is more human in this movie. But then there's also that scene in the sewer where he and Corey first meet and they lock eyes. And there seems to be some kind of weird link between the two at that point. Again, make a decision one way or another, because that drastically changes the character you're presenting in Michael, and that drastically changes the movie you're making.
Yeah, it does. And that actually brings me to another thing I wanted to talk about. So, this isn't usually something that we talk about when we do these reviews, but this is how I feel about Halloween Kills and Halloween Ends. To me, I think that both these movies were made and released in the wrong order. And here's what I mean by that. I think the overall premise for this movie should have been used as the second one instead. I think if you had to keep the whole storyline with Corey, then fine, save that for this movie, have it take place a couple years after the first one, Halloween 2018, and then have the premise for Halloween Kills be the third movie, taking place right after it, and instead have it be Laurie who leads the entire town against Michael to hunt him down and finally end him. So that's just an opinion for me. That's something I've always kind of felt after seeing this movie. I think that this and Halloween Kills were made and released in the wrong order.
Yeah, I completely agree. And honestly, going off of the idea I had a few minutes ago, which is I think a great idea for the second movie is Michael back, and then it's revealed that no, it's this copycat who turns out to be Corey. And then it's revealed at the very end of the second movie that Michael is alive and ready to come back and start his quest to go home. Then have the angry mob be the third movie. I think that flows a hell of a lot better than this trilogy actually does.
Yeah, but either way, on a scale of 1 to 10, what would you give this film?
Oh, jeez. I really didn't like this movie. Again, it's still not the worst movie in the Halloween franchise. I would say Resurrection or Four or God, any of the Cult of the Thorn BS in this franchise is worse than this. But God, I really just did not like this movie. I'm gonna give it a 4.5 because another thing I didn't even mention, and I'll just keep this brief, is they kind of duped us with the marketing. Like all of the trailers and all the ads seem to be, oh yeah, this is the final confrontation between Laurie Strode and Michael Myers. Oh yeah, but we're not going to mention that it's like the last 10% of the movie, and it feels super tacked on. But yeah, no, 4.5 I feel feels accurate. Also, I'm sorry, this movie did not earn playing "Don't Fear the Reaper" over the end credits.
Okay, I see what you mean. Yeah, I think on a scale of 1 to 10, I'll probably have to give it either. Yeah, I guess I'm gonna have to go with 4.5 or 5 because, yeah, like you said, it's not the worst Halloween movie in the franchise, but it's definitely not one of the better ones. But you know what? If another Halloween movie comes up in the future, I still will probably see it, and hopefully they'll be able to do Michael more justice than they did in this movie. But we'll see what happens. All right, guys, I think that that's going to be the end of our review. Thanks so much for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you later. Thanks. Bye.